let's go over some basics of selecting stitches on the Husqvarna Viking Onyx 15. So everything is going to be done on this stitch selection knob. You'll also notice that on most of the stitches, there are actually 3 stitches per location. So I'm going to explain the difference. How do you get different stitch lengths and different stitch widths? So when you're starting off, you're going to just probably want to be on a straight stitch. So that's going to be with the logo straight up and down. That's the way you know you're there. As you look at those 3 different colored stitches here, the first stitch is kind of more of a black color. So indicating that you'll be using the area 0 through 4 for selecting that particular stitch's stitch length. A normal stitch length for a straight stitch is about 2.5. Of course, if you're working on a thicker piece of fabric, you're going to lengthen that to 3. And if you're working on a lighter weight fabric, I tend to go closer to 2. So somewhere in that range. But if you find yourself with little tiny stitches, you can always kind of go up to the higher number. We'll be using areas between 0 and 1 when we do, say, the buttonholes and some of the decorative stitches as well. So the nice thing too is as you sew, you can adjust the stitch length. So if you want to just take a piece of fabric right now and kind of change it, you can change the stitch length while you're in the middle of sewing. Just remember, when you go to take it out, turn the hand wheel all the way so the take-up lever comes to the highest position. That's when you can lift up the presser foot and use the little cutter on this side. When you put your fabric back in, you don't have to hold those threads anymore. It really just kind of the foot sits on those threads, and you can just start from the beginning. Here, I'll show you. All right, so we're kind of back to where we started. If you're wanting a zigzag, let's kind of jump over to there. You'll notice that there was all these clicks between that and the actual zigzag itself. On this machine, your stitch width is determined by where you are on this picture. If you're on the shorter, kind of narrower side of the picture, you're going to get a very narrow version of the zigzag. And then as you go wider and wider, you will get all the way up to the widest setting, which is when you're on that full picture location. Now, if you wanted to make the zigzag closer together, almost form a satin stitch, that's where you're going to use the combination of find the width you like and then adjust the stitch length shorter and shorter. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to just kind of sew over here. And as I shorten this, I'm getting the stitches to be more dense, more pulled together, and I can dial in a perfect satin stitch. There we go. And then I can see what that looks like. You can really see that as I shortened it, those stitches became closer and closer until they were solid, which, by the way, that's what a perfect satin stitch is supposed to look like there. If I was doing a lot of satin stitching, I'd also switch over to the B presser foot, B as in boy, and that way you'll have a smoother ride. Underneath that foot it's cut out, so it's ideal. Now let's talk about the other stitches. So on any of these stitches, you see that there's a first stitch, which would be how you're going to get it if you're anywhere between 0 and 4. So right now, for example, this is like a multiple point zigzag. If I want the middle stitch, which is kind of a blue color, then you're going to turn the stitch length dial to the blue S1 section. So give it a good turn until S1 is at the top. And now you're going to get the stitch shown in the middle of the 3 stitches. Okay. Then if you want the third stitch showing, switch it over to S2. It's kind of a more of a grayer looking stitch on the dial, and then you'll have that stitch. So that is how it's set up. You just pick the stitch, and depending on which one you want, you're either on the first one, 0 to 4, the second one, which is S1, and the third one, which is S2. That's how easy it is to pick your stitches. Now, as you start to do different techniques, we're going to also explore the sewing advisor, where you can set it up for, say, a blind hem or a buttonhole, and then this will guide you to what your stitch length should be, what foot you are using, and also which stitch you should be using. On the second level, there is actually what to do if you're working on a knit versus a woven fabric. So as the symbols, they'll get a little easier as we go. You could always look in the manual and it will define what these symbols are, but it's such nice to have this little reference right at your fingertips. Just don't forget that it's there. When you want to go back to normal, like right now, my needle's in the fabric just a little bit. If I'm not sewing, I would recommend that you actually make sure the needle is out of the fabric before twisting this knob, because as you can see, that needle is going to kind of jump to where it is. So if you're turning it, you can go ahead and get back to a straight stitch and that needle won't bend in your fabric. Go back to the stitch length you want and you're back to where you started. So it's really easy once you start to explore how to select stitches and how easy it is when you only have 2 dials to worry about. I hope you'll check out all the videos. We'll put links below in the description where you can find the complete playlist of all the videos on this beautiful Husqvarna Viking Onyx 15 sewing machine.